You have a primary coming up in June, I believe.
Yeah, June 5th.
Excellent. Well, we will be watching for the primary, and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. It was so nice talking with you.
Yeah, you too.
Has the election of Trump made you feel like you're living through the end times? Want to know how to stop it? Join us for End Times Pep Talk. I'm Rebecca, the Jew one.
I'm Megan, the gay one.
I'm Smitha, the brown one.
And we're feminist as fuck.
Who the fuck are we? Literally nobody, but we're really angry and we have a lot of shit to say.
Why the fuck are we doing this podcast?
We've been doing a lot since the election and we've learned some things, such as, what white guy named Tim is my representative? What is reconciliation? Who is trying to kill us today?
We thought it might be useful to record it so that other people can try not to die too.
So join us every week for End Times Pep Talk. You can find us wherever you get your legitimate podcasts.
I am here with Amber Gustafson, who is running for the Iowa State Senate in District 19. Hi, Amber.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So could you tell me a little bit just about what your background is and why you've decided to run for state senate?
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up on a farm in southwestern Iowa. Very quintessential, what you think of as a farm is exactly what I grew up on. We had pigs, we had cows, we had crops. My dad made his living as a farmer and, all of that entails. And we went through the 80s farm crisis that a lot of people maybe aren't familiar with or maybe have heard of, but it's been a while. But in the 80s, farm land value and farm borrowing rates kind of went in, really had a hard time. And a lot of families went through bankruptcy and lost their farm, and that included us. And we had, all this livestock and row crop and all this kind of stuff when we woke up one day and all of that was gone. It was no longer ours. And so we pulled up stakes and moved, and that began a journey for our family of just a very real struggle, for the next really 20 years of our family life that included a lot of health problems, marital problems, education issues, and just a real fight for the dignity of our family and for the ability for those of us who survived to be able to make it from poverty to the middle class. And so I decided to run because I have been working with Moms Demand Action for the last 5 years, really almost since Sandy Hook. And I got involved with moms because with my rural background and having grown up around guns and being a gun owner, I really felt like I had not only the ability to speak cross-culturally, but I also had an obligation as a gun owner and somebody who supports the Second Amendment to get involved in the conversation around gun safety. And I really thought that if we can have a peaceful, productive, reasonable conversation about guns, then we can have a peaceful, reasonable, productive conversation about anything. And I said, let's tackle the hardest thing that's out there, one of the most controversial issues, probably outside of the issue of abortion. And let's see if we can find some common sense solutions and see if we can replicate that cross-cultural conversation to other hard issues that we face here in Iowa, things like water quality and Medicaid and education funding and those sorts of things that are far less controversial, but no less important.
Did I read somewhere that you used to be a Republican?
This is true. My secret is out. It is true. I was a Republican up until 2008. People always ask me, what made you leave the Republican Party? And I have two answers: guns and healthcare. As a mom, I just was heartbroken to see what was happening with gun violence in our communities. And I could just see the writing on the wall that our communities were becoming less and less safe, and that there was a very concerted effort on the part of the gun lobby to repeal laws or to put laws in place that made it easier for dangerous people to access weapons. And I was not okay with that. And the other thing was the issue of healthcare. We are small business owners. My husband and I have owned a small business for nearly 20 years. And that entire time we've carried private health insurance, and it has been a nightmare. We have seen the good, we have seen the bad, we've seen the ugly, and we have seen the downright immoral when it comes to healthcare offerings. And, we were very excited when the Affordable Care Act became an option for us because it actually opened the door for us to be able to have access to a level of healthcare that we hadn't had since I was a public employee when I worked at the University of Missouri. And so it was just such a blessing to our family to be able to get the healthcare services that we need. And we have basically slowly eroded all of that away. And we're now back to a place where we have basically the same level of coverage that we did before the Affordable Care Act, but it costs us about 3 times as much. So, we need to have some very real hard conversations about health insurance in this country, and particularly in the state of Iowa.
Yeah, I think that's something that hasn't been addressed enough, this idea that the Affordable Care Act, or really even things that are better than the Affordable Care Act with more coverage, more availability, are really important for innovation, important for the ability for people to start their own businesses, run their own businesses, live in this sort of gig economy where, the way the economy works is very different than it used to be.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, if I could get in my, my DeLorean and go back to, 2009 or 2010 or whenever they were having these conversations about the Affordable Care Act, I wish that I could have told them to talk about the Affordable Care Act as a plan that specifically benefits independent contractors and the self-employed. And obviously there are other people that need and qualify for the Affordable Care Act, but the bulk of people that need private health insurance obviously are, self-employed. And, exactly what you said, if this is positioned as something as, hey, this is an investment that you can make in keeping your body healthy so that you can continue to build your business, I think we would have had a completely different conversation on our hands around the issue of healthcare. But nevertheless, here we are, and now we have an opportunity to talk about healthcare, I hope, in a different way. And, with Iowa being a rural state, and obviously Illinois and Wisconsin as well, farmers carry their own insurance too. So, it's crucial that, that people have access to the care that they need and that they can protect their family's financial future through a good investment in their own healthcare.
Can you talk a little bit about what your district in Iowa looks like? So this is the 19th district, and I was looking a little bit at the history of voting there, and it looks like in 2010 there was a Democrat in this seat who ran unopposed, and then there was a Republican in 2014 who won like 80% of the vote. So what's going on there? Where is this in Iowa? And what in the world is happening?
We had some redistricting. And so the 19th district used to be in a much more blue area than what it represents now. So the 19th district used to be over in Cedar Rapids, and now the 19th district is this area just directly north of Des Moines. So Des Moines is obviously the most populous city in all of Iowa, which sits in the most populous county in all of Iowa, which is Polk County. And so just to kind of give you an idea of population-wise, so this county, which would be, mostly Des Moines and then all of the surrounding suburban areas, will reach about 1 million people by the year 2040. So it's a very fast-growing city. It's becoming far more urban. It's becoming a lot more diverse. We have had a tremendous influx of refugees into our community from all over the world, and have a lot of immigrants coming in to work here. But my particular district sits on the north side of Polk County, and so I actually take in the very northern tier of precincts on the north side of Des Moines, which is very blue-collar, very heavy union area. A lot of people, obviously that live there work for companies like Firestone, or they're part of the building trades, or, different things like that. And then as you go a little further north, you get into a more suburban area, which is kind of more of the part that I live in, which is this city called Ankeny. And, very much your typical suburban type of city, but very, very fast growing. I mean, we have been in like the top 10, fastest growing cities in the U.S. off and on for the last 15 years. My youngest child is in a school building that has 750 students. And it's one of 11 buildings in this district, 11 elementary school buildings in this district. And we just recently split off and made a second high school. So it's very rapidly growing. It's a very young community. The average age here is far lower than the average age of the rest of Des Moines. Very highly educated. The majority of people that live in the suburb of Ankeny, they work in the insurance industry. They work in manufacturing. We have a lot of ag, biotech, finance, education. So, a lot of really great career opportunities. And then as you go further north into my district, it gets into a rural area with, traditional farms, just like the farm that I grew up on, and another couple little rural small towns. And so I really like to say that my district is kind of a microcosm of Iowa in that we have urban, suburban, and rural, but it's really in a lot of ways kind of a microcosm of the United States. Now, obviously, we're not as diverse as, a city like Chicago or, some of the other cities in the U.S., but we are becoming more diverse, and that's something definitely to be celebrated. At the same time, one of the things that we are really, really struggling with here in Iowa, across the state, and especially in our district, is we have a really severe labor shortage. And so even though we have this influx of people really kind of moving in from the rural areas and the community is growing and growing, we still cannot find enough skilled labor to fill the open positions that we have. In my district, there is a John Deere manufacturing plant, and they have at this time 100 open positions. They're all union jobs. They pay really well, and they are hurting to try to find people to fill those jobs. So, that's kind of a little broader picture of what's going on in our district.
All right, listeners. So if you're looking for work, head to head to Senate District 19 in Iowa.
Yes. It's a great place to live, a great place to raise a family, wonderful schools, low crime. We love it here.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 3. I have a 14-year-old boy, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and a daughter that will turn 9 on Friday.
And so what is it like running for office and owning your own business while also having 3 kids?
Oh, my gosh. I think, was it Jim Gaffigan? Somebody once asked him, what's it like having 5 children? And he's like, it's like drowning. And then somebody says, here, hold this baby. I kind of feel the same way, but I have to say that my kids are just, and my husband too, they are absolutely my support system. They are incredible. They have picked up so much of the slack when it comes to housework stuff. And, they're super understanding when I'm, 15 minutes late picking them up for this thing, or, oh, sorry, you can't go to that tonight because mom has an event, or, different things. And so they've just really been awesome and very, very understanding. And so right when I first got involved with moms, I had kind of been, mostly a stay-at-home mom. At that point, I had been doing a lot of volunteer work in my community, like, probably 20 or 30 hours a week of volunteer work. But I didn't have a full-time job. And the conversation around putting a woman on the currency, on the paper currency in the U.S. came up. This was years ago. And we were talking about it in the car. And my daughter, I said to my daughters, I said, oh, who do what woman do you think should be on the $5 bill? And my youngest one said, Mommy. And my middle daughter said, why? She's never done anything.
Oh, no.
Uh-huh. And I thought for a second, what am I modeling for my girls? Obviously I was doing a lot. I was doing a lot of volunteer work. I was working with refugees. I was on the preschool board. I was PTO president. I was serving in our church, doing all sorts of things. But it wasn't what impressed her, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. And I thought, you know what, if I want them to blaze a trail, I need to go before them. And that really, and even though that was years ago, that really got me to start thinking about, how am I living my life in front of my daughters? And am I taking risks? And am I dreaming big? And am I taking initiative to change what I think is wrong with the world? And am I helping in a way that is really fully using all the talents and gifts that I have been given? And so through the course of time, the opportunity came up for me to be able to run, and I haven't looked back. And, even though the kids sometimes, that means that they get McDonald's for dinner, which they love. So, I mean, let's not kid ourselves here, and it probably means that they spend a little bit more time on their electronics than they used to, which again, they love. So so far it's pretty much been a win-win for them, and they've been amazingly supportive.
And the